Okay, ladies, gentlemen, everyone, welcome to another week of EECS 440. It's good to see you. If you look at the schedule, we are right in the middle of a pretty tough assignment. We didn't really have time to introduce P1 Alpha on Wednesday due to our film session, but P1 Alpha has a handful of tasks that are a bit of a step up from P1 Milestone. It has the whiteboard task, it has the copier task, it has the fire alarm. It has a bunch of interactions where you actually do need to think a little bit carefully about where you're going to put your logic. Are you going to put it on the component? Are you going to put it in the interact function of an affordance component? Are you going to put it in a more centralized singular location like on the game mode class or the game state class? So lots of decisions that you need to start making and experimenting with. And hopefully, as you do this and as you make mistakes and as you refactor things and move stuff around, you'll start to get a bit more comfortable with what you can do in Unreal Engine. And hopefully that confidence will really help you when we get to that final project toward the end of the semester. All right? In any case, you know what I find? Most of the people getting hired for Unreal Engine gigs, they don't actually know how to do blueprints. Like, they don't actually know how to go in and start building logic. That is not going to describe you. You are going to be able to get in there, get to the guts of this very scary, to many people, engine, and do some very custom things. And that really is what a lot of teams, a lot of research teams, a lot of companies are looking for. So this is all to say, as you work and whittle away at P1 Alpha, the time you are burning, the pain you might be running into with some of these more difficult tasks, this is not wasted, okay? You are getting stronger, and you'll start to feel it soon enough. Another thing to remember, these tasks don't need to be finished or complete or bug-free until the end of P1 Gold. That is over a week away. You just need to have a basic rough draft kind of sort of implementation in there, and you're going to get full points on P1 Alpha for those tasks. Okay? So keep that in mind. That'll relieve some of the pressure you might be feeling with the deadline for P1 Alpha in just 2 days. Okay? Don't go crazy. Don't let the pressure build up too high on you, okay? Take a break if you need to. All right. Okay, so I've got a company for you. I've got an XR firm for you, and this is kind of an interesting one. This XR firm, Obsess AR, is one of those companies that didn't make it. They're dead. They died sometime during the last semester when EECS 440 wasn't running. And so imagine my surprise when I go to click on the website, and I click on the website, and I see Napster. Napster.ai. Anyone remember Napster? Napster was like an early music sharing site, I think. Like, it kind of got into some legal trouble, but the name, the brand name, still matters to, old people like me, I guess. And it looks like some AI startup just bought the IP, and now it's Napster AI, nothing to do with music. And it says, transform your website and business in the age of AI. This was supposed to be an AR company. Okay, an AR, an XR company. This company, it looks like, got about $13.5 million in funding. Crunchbase says that much, at least. Okay, let me see if I can find it right here. Some key people. Okay, I think maybe I have to. They're hiding it from me now, but this was a 3D virtual store platform that enabled brands to build immersive, engaging shopping experiences on their e-commerce sites. This is one of those companies that you would hire to kind of build out some VR and AR stuff for your company. A question. Let's look on here really quickly. I found the web archive. So the Wayback Machine kind of saved us, and we can take a look at what the website kind of sort of used to look like. When you look at this website, you're going to see one of the most striking things is that this company has a lot of partners, a lot of people they've worked with. Dyson, Nestle, Disney, J. Crew, Ralph Lauren. Most of these Elf, Tarte, Dyson, Mythera, Sam's Club, most of these partners had a digital storefront created for them, a kind of digital space in which you could show up in VR, look around, and even possibly buy things and transact and have it shipped to you. This company did a lot of business during the pandemic era. And you can kind of see here what some of these areas looked like, what some of the UI looked like. And a question for you. When a company like Nestle decides that it wants to have some sort of presence in XR, it wants to have its own kind of VR shop so that people stranded by the pandemic, they can't go in person, want to go, then they can go virtually. When Nestle decides that they want something like what you're seeing up here, does Nestle have a built-in, internal XR team with a bunch of Unity devs, a bunch of Unreal devs to make this, a bunch of 3D modelers? Some companies do. Companies like Quicken Loans, i.e. Rocket Mortgages, does. But many companies don't. A company like Nestle isn't really going to be able to or interested in recruiting and building up a big team to handle this kind of thing. What they're going to do instead is they're going to pay a premium to an external team like Obsess AR that has a lot of experience doing this kind of thing for other businesses, for other companies. What's one of the benefits of doing that? Why would you choose to hire Obsess AR instead of build your own internal team to do this? Any ideas? What could be an advantage? Yes?
Portability, just honestly, you taking the time to hire a whole new team, develop software, so all that time wasted.
Yeah.
Realistically, they're leasing out their services, pretty much preset AR and XR stuff.
Yeah.
It's probably just be cheaper in the long run.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So I said you pay a premium, but what you're paying, that premium is a little bit of extra dough to reward the Obsess AR team for building whatever space you need. You are going to save a lot of money over building your own internal team and funding, six-figure salaries for 5 or 6 people for years. You might be able to create something like this much faster, since you don't have to go and recruit all those people and then build up the culture and the technology base and all that good stuff. You can do something like this. You can hire a third-party kind of consulting firm or studio to do this. We'll see a few of this kind of company this semester. However, there is a significant disadvantage to doing this. Any idea? If Obsess AR comes to you and says, hey, we can make your virtual reality storefront because we've already made one for all of your competitors, how do you feel?
That it looks like all your other competitors.
Exactly. The secret sauce is gone. Okay, if you are betting a lot on this kind of thing, you want to have a really great and very customizable, very custom, very tailored to your brand kind of experience. That's the kind of thing that a company like Obsess AR might not be able to deliver. They're going to deliver something probably a bit pre-packaged. They'll customize it a bit for you, but it's going to be similar to all of your rivals. You're not going to stand out that much. And if you're not going to stand out that much, what exactly is the point? Well, a lot of companies said there is a point, right? And they decided to go forward with it and have Obsess AR build this space. But, and you can also see kind of in the really broken CSS styling here, you can kind of see how Obsess AR was pitching this, right? 140 million plus consumer interactions in our virtual stores, 10 times more time, 10x more time customers spend in our store, our virtual store, than in real world stores, right? 70% email plus SMS opt-in rate for the virtual store for luxury men's grooming brand. That seems very specific. One big thing, and if you're ever an investor, you want to know this, and if you're ever a startup, you want to know this, being too picky like this and really cherry picking your data, it's kind of like, can someone give me like a movie that bombed recently? Any like big blockbuster failures here, like box office bombs? Haven't the Marvel movies been struggling a lot? Wasn't there like a big box office bomb? Snow White. Okay, so Snow White is coming out, and Snow White comes out in the theaters, and it's a disaster. The critics' reviews are bad. The sales are not very good. Some people like it, but a lot of people don't. And a Disney commercial comes out and says, Snow White is the biggest film of the year. In the month of January, starring 7 dwarves. And they don't do it quite that badly, but that's how it starts to feel, right? They're getting so specific so they can make a bold claim and, hope that you don't notice. When you see this kind of thing, it's very suspicious. It makes you question the company's methodology, how they're collecting these stats. And in general, as far as I can tell, they don't really have a methodology or white paper or publication of any sort to kind of explain how they're getting these stats and, what is going into it and all that stuff. So, in general, this up here, the fact that they did work with a bunch of different companies is much more valuable than the stats that you're seeing down here. One of these is a lot of proof, and one of these is just numbers without a bunch of backing. But anyway, you can see kind of what the pitch was. You should create a digital store because consumers are going to go to it, and they're going to spend more time. They're probably going to spend more money. Apparently, that wasn't enough. Okay, you can see that they have mobile versions, they have desktop versions, they have iPads, they've got Roblox version, they have a VR version. It's a little bit strange that the company's name is Obsess AR when their product seems to be mostly VR, but maybe they had plans to go more AR. They have a lot of stuff in here. They've got a lot of different test kind of case studies for different brands and the things they did for them. Pretty impressive website. Definitely one of my favorites, though it is messed up by the Wayback Machine. But what happened? They weren't able to make it work. Who knows if the business simply dried up and partners lost interest? Who knows if they weren't able to make enough money? Because they can create really impressive spaces, but if they can't monetize those spaces somehow, then they can't keep the lights on. They need to change their business. Do you know how they made money? I'm fairly sure that they made money. If you explore through here, you find they make money on kind of an upfront commission from the company that wants their own digital storefront. But then they make money off a tax, a digital tax. When you make a transaction through this platform, they're going to tax it at a certain percent, and they're going to make some additional ongoing revenue that way. Many times, companies will try and go for multiple revenue streams like that. And investors get very excited about that. If one revenue stream starts to die or falter, the other revenue streams might be able to pick up the slack and keep the company viable. But in the end, it looks like they didn't make it, okay? And now when you go to their website, what do you see? You get redirected to an AI company instead. There are, how do I say this? If you've got a company that has taken a lot of funding and has a lot of investors, right? A company that may have taken $13+ million. If the company is just kind of making a little bit of money, like it's profitable but not very much, those companies often get killed, okay? They get killed. Why do those companies, they're profitable. Why do they get killed? Any idea? And this is something I learned from Professor Aaron Crum in the Center for Entrepreneurship. Wonderful professor over there, great courses. Why do you kill a company that's only slightly profitable? If you're an investor, you want to get rid of that company. Yes?
You could put that money somewhere else and get more out of it.
Yeah, that's part of it. Number one, if you invest $13 million and only get a tiny return, like a 1% return, well, that's better than losing money. But you know what kind of return I can get with my money right now? Basically zero risk, zero effort from me, zero hassle. About 7% inflation adjusted, okay? And that's just like buying ETFs, diversified ETFs, S&P 500 stuff, right? So the question an investor is going to have is, why should I give you $10 million for your startup when I could take this and get 7% inflation adjusted forever and have no hassle? Don't have to go to any meetings with you. I don't have to connect you with anyone. I don't have to worry about you or watch your financials. So a company like Obsess AR is not expected to make a few percent in terms of return. It's got to be well over 10% non-inflation adjusted raw dollars per year, okay? Otherwise, it's just not really worth it, and I'll just go buy some ETFs instead. So that's part of it. Another thing is that when an investor has a company that they are funding, this is not a free thing in terms of their time. Every company that you have is going to steal some attention from you, take some time. You have to connect the founders with other people who can help them. You have to kind of watch over them, make sure they're not getting into any trouble, make sure that they're not stealing or like being fraudulent with your money. So even a company that is slightly profitable, in many cases, if it can't get going soon enough, the investor will just say, we're gonna cut you loose, okay? We're gonna sell you, right? We're gonna finish you off, right? So these are sometimes referred to as zombie companies. They are slightly profitable. They just won't die, and so you have to go out and you have to take them behind the shed, okay? All right. So an interesting firm for sure. They are now an AI company, it looks like. I'm not sure if this is the same company or a related company, and the URL has just been shifted. But it's a little bit sad to see. You can see another thing here is that some founders and some investors, they are not really married to any particular technology. Some investors crave XR. They really believe in it. They're going to stick with it, even as the kind of Gartner hype cycle starts its downturn. But many companies and investors will just hop from tech hype wave to tech hype wave to tech hype wave. It will not be surprising if in 4 or 5 years, the Obsess AR URL, which used to point to a VR company, now points to an AI company, is instead pointing to a crypto company, if crypto researches, or a gene editing company, if that's the next hype wave, okay? So keep these things in mind. Depending on what kind of business or startup or company you end up with, depending on if you move to a place with a lot of that activity like Silicon Valley, you'll start to notice some of this stuff, and hopefully you won't be surprised by it anymore. A slightly profitable startup is usually not long for this world, and it looks like Obsess AR couldn't quite make it. Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, good stuff. Still a pretty cool company. I'm glad that we got to see all these brands at least take a shot at creating a space like this. Okay, so I've got some reminders. A really cool one actually is the My2 lab. Professor Niebling is often recruiting for his School of Information MI2 lab, the Michigan Interaction Lab, Human-Computer Interaction Lab, and they are very often looking for people who can genuinely get into these VR environments, these game engines, and code, build actual logic, not just import things or use plugins, but build your own technology. And so this is one lab that's featured on the Get a Job Guide. You can find the others online at the Get a Job Guide as well. One quick thing, Laboratories are underrated. If you're looking for a job, if you're looking for a summer internship, if you ever think you might want to go to grad school, knowing a professor who likes you, who thinks you do good work, you move fast, is a golden ticket to grad school. Okay? I kid you not, it could be enough to get you straight in, even if your grades aren't that good, even if your other letters stink. If I recall, and don't quote me on this, because I don't take a look at the system too much anymore, but toward the end of the grad school recruiting cycle at Michigan, there is an opportunity for any professor who has rationale to add a student to their lab to literally go in and flip a denial for a grad student application to approved and admitted, just like that. And typically you do this by basically saying, hey, I know this person, I can vouch for them, I need this person in my lab, they're golden, they're great, they do great work. And boom, you're in grad school now. It can be that simple, okay? So anyway, keep that stuff in mind because it can be very valuable, more than just the pay or the resume material. Apple has created their own game engine. Did you know that? Did I show that to you earlier? Okay. Apple, if you haven't seen it, they, oh my goodness, that's not good. Apple has privated their video showing off Reality Composer Pro. So let's see if we can find it. Let's see if we can find more videos. Hopefully we can. Here we go. All right. Okay. And when you look at this game engine, I was just amazed at a couple things. One, this looks really familiar. What does this look like? Anyone? Can you tell me? Like the color palette is familiar, the layout is familiar. We got the hierarchy over to the left. We got the inspector panel to the right and the project pane on the bottom. Yes?
Is that Unity?
Yeah, that looks exactly like Unity, doesn't it? It sure does. But no, this is Apple's kind of in-house game engine, and it is mainly meant to give you a starting platform for creating Vision Pro apps and Vision Pro visualizations and stuff like that. Now, Unity can be used to create Vision Pro stuff. It is very deluxe. I'm really surprised why they didn't just buy Unity. Apple has a lot of extra cash. Unity has been making bad decisions. They're quite cheap. Their stock is in the trenches. It's garbage. And so you really wonder if Apple shouldn't have maybe gone for it. But who knows, right? Maybe they're just not interested in owning a game engine that can make stuff for Windows or Android. They might be concerned that if they bought Unity and then discontinued the Windows export, the game console export, they might get some antitrust scrutiny that they don't want. So instead, they build their own version of Unity, and it's much more limited, and there you go. But kind of interesting, another interesting thing is the terminology that Apple uses. They call it Reality Composer Pro. I've often wondered whether the game engine terminology would stick around long term, because game engines are now used for games, yes, but they're used for many other things as well. It feels a little bit strange, probably, to walk into Warner Brothers head office and say, hey, we're going to, or Disney's head office and say, hey, film studio, we're going to use a game engine to make The Mandalorian. It's just a little bit awkward, right? You think crusty executives would be like, wait, like we're using a game engine for a film, and just immediately be skeptical. But who knows? The term seems to be sticking around. If it sticks around for another decade, then it's probably permanent. But it's interesting to see companies like Apple starting to move away from the terminology for that reason. Too bad that the Vision Pro is a bit of a flop. Reality Composer Pro has to not get much usage these days. So, okay, kind of interesting, isn't it? Okay, some quick Project One tips, just some things you might have forgotten. As you are working on these more difficult tasks, you have to make decisions about where you will place your logic, and those decisions really matter. There's a very big difference between placing logic into a blueprint, which could be a table, it could be a fire alarm, brick on the wall, it could be a light, or onto a component that goes on the blueprint, the actor. These are two different places, and you need to know where your code is running. If you are ever putting code into a component and you want to be able to get a reference to the actor that you're on, the blueprint that you're on, you can always call get owner, and that will get you a reference to that actor that you're on. It's a very common way to write component-based code. If you want your components or your like multiple components on the same actor to be able to communicate, you can use the get owner node to grab a reference to your parent, your actor, and then that actor has other components beyond just you. So then you can use the get component by class node to grab any component you want on that actor, and you can grab it by type. So these can be very, very useful. Another reminder, in one of our previous lectures, very recently, we built a find all no-tie lovers function in blueprints. That is a really good example. It uses a lot of useful nodes, and it does kind of a useful thing. It scans through all the actors that exist, it checks what components they have, and then it looks within the character data component to find out what food this particular actor likes. And so take a look at that again if you are getting flustered or you don't know where to begin with a particular component, with a particular task, as it will hopefully give you some inspiration on what you might do, where you might go. Okay? Anyone have any questions on this topic? Okay. So I showed you a few P1 Gold custom objects, and I want to kind of do the same thing today as P1 Gold is approaching. I want you and your teammate to start kind of thinking about what kind of custom task you might want to make. These can be gigantic, like the gigantic CSE Student Life Simulator minigame. Do you remember that when I showed that to you? You walk into that back room, you have like some projects you need to do for the different classes, you're pounding on the keyboard, you're trying to pick up the phone to keep your social life, right? Very impressive. But you can have something smaller. So here's a really small one, an energy drink that alters your vision. So I was at the office hours last night from 8 to 11. It was packed. You can kind of see the amount of erasing someone had to do to get rid of all the names we helped out. But I had a Red Bull right up here, and I needed it bad. It's just kind of a part of the culture for many people in computer science. We don't really have great sleep schedules, and so we need the Red Bull. And so a very simple task, but a very cool one that forced the students to go learn something new, how to do visual effects. So there's your Red Bull. And when you bring it up to your mouth, we detect this, and then you can see the visuals have kind of become more stark and a little bit weird, okay? I think maybe some things start to flash, but your vision changes in kind of a subtle way, and then over time, I think the color fades back in. Yeah, so the color was gone, and now it's kind of coming back. So not too crazy, not too complex. You have a new object. It has a custom interaction with the player pawn, your face, and the team had to go learn some new stuff, which, is good. That's exactly what we're looking for. Well done. And then the hidden beer pong minigame. This is one of the simpler ones, just like the Red Bull drink. And you just have a couple collisions here. You have some custom logic. The ball hits a trigger, it warps back, it loses its sense of physics until the player picks it back up and throws it again. We have some sound effects, some scoring that happens. That's it. Nothing too crazy. You can do whatever you want for this custom object and interaction coming up on P1 Gold. And as long as you're hitting kind of at least this level of effort and complexity, you're going to get full points, okay? Not too crazy. And a reminder, this P1 Gold period is extra time for you to finish up all those tasks that you didn't quite complete. on P1 milestone and P1 alpha. So use that time. Know that it's coming, and that'll help you be a bit less stressed on P1 alpha. Okay? Any other questions? I don't remember if I showed you the Matrix one, but maybe you'll like it a bit more now that you've seen the Matrix film. Let's take a look. So this is extremely high effort. I do not expect this level of investment. I think this was actually some EECS 494 students who were taking 440, so they kind of had some game engine knowledge going on. But you choose the red pill or the blue pill. If you choose the red pill on the wall, you actually load a new map where you discover that, hey, we actually, CSE is the Matrix. Okay? And you knew it all along, right? Those long nights, those nasty, difficult autograder test cases. It was the Matrix the whole time trying to trap you. And so now we have kind of a different styling. We can see the ruined city. But you also have a new mode of transportation. You can actually fly around, which is super, super cool. The city has, I think, one Easter egg in it, and it basically ends the game. Got about 1 hour of sleep last night. You know why? No. World of Warcraft. And you all laugh, okay? You all laugh, but I'm trying to learn it so I can teach the new MMO architecture course that I'm trying to finish up. And World of Warcraft has some interesting technology for how it makes things super smooth. Its design is also pretty unique. Okay. Anyway, all right. We are now back in the Matrix, back in the normal laboratory. And yeah, if you choose the blue pill, then I think you get a bad ending, which is kind of interesting. Okay. Cool. Any questions or comments? All right. Rock and roll. Today, what I want to do is I want to try and help you understand Unreal Engine a bit better, but also game engines in general. And this time, I'm not talking about game logic. We've spent a couple lectures talking about blueprints and programming in Unreal, trying to convince you that everything you learned in 280 and 281 is applicable in blueprints. It just looks a bit different. You just have to get used to that. Well, there's another side to game engines that is very, very tricky, and that is the environments, the geometry, and in our case, the materials. The materials, how things look. I've got a little spoiler for you, all right? A little spoiler. I'm going to tell you 3 white objects in this room. And they all use the same color, but they have very different materials, okay? In front of you, these desks are white, right? And look at them. The desk in front of you, it's, you know, kind of white. That's what the albedo is. That's what the color is. But when you touch it, right, it's super smooth. You also notice that, yeah, it's white, but it's not very shiny. Right? It doesn't look very plasticky. Compare the desk in front of you to this whiteboard right here. Okay, what's different about it? The color is the same. But why does the object look so different if the color is the same? Yes? It's more shiny, right? Yes, it has a smoother surface. A surface that is so smooth that is reflecting light in kind of a very focused manner, not really sending it flying everywhere, but focusing the light. Compare this whiteboard and this table in front of you now to the wall, okay? And the wall, it's a bit hard to see, but if you get close to the wall, you'll notice it's rough. And it's not shiny at all. It's like less shiny than even the table. It's scattering light. Okay? So this is the idea I want you to have in your head right now. The way that something looks is about more than just the color that it is or the texture that it has. It's also about the way that light kind of reflects off of it, the way that light interacts with it. By the way that a light interacts with a surface is called a shader. Have you heard that word before? Okay. If you are into video games, then you probably heard shader, and you probably heard it's hard to program shaders. Yeah, it kind of is. It's a very strange way of programming. In EECS 494, we program it textually, programming some GPU code in a language called CG. Here, Unreal Engine is going to make it very easy for us to do this. So let's go ahead and take a look. All right, let's take a look at environments and materials. Game engines really do give us an incredible way to make environments, to prototype things. In fact, one of the main use cases for game engines or 3D modeling software is to prototype real spaces before we build them, to see if they're going to look nice or to figure out if they're going to be cool. When I kind of semi-recently moved into my new home, one of the things that we decided pretty quickly is that the main living room was kind of sequestered off from the kitchen, and that because there was no like supporting material, critical supports in this wall, we were going to knock the wall down and make a bar. It was really, really fun, but it was a huge pain, okay? Whereas if I want to knock this down, I can just, in Unreal, I could just go in and move a wall or delete the wall or stretch the wall like that. Done. Seconds, right? 3 seconds. In real life, you need access to a bunch of tools that you might not have. You might need to go rent them or buy them. You need also a lot of time. And there's my late dog, Ellie, kind of wondering what on earth we're doing. But you have to go in and you have to start kind of carefully knocking down the walls because you don't know what's going to be inside of those walls. There might be electrical stuff inside the walls, and you don't want to be, sawing into an electrical wire. That sounds like a terrible, terrible idea. There could be water or piping in the walls. You just don't really know if you just bought the house. And so it takes a very long time. It was very much worth it, right? But it took us about 3 hours in total with multiple people, my father having a lot of experience with this, to knock that wall down, okay? A huge, huge pain to what we can do in game engines or 3D modeling software. But when you knock something like this down, you can't stop there because things are kind of messed up. It doesn't look very good. You have messed up some of the walls, and it looks very inconsistent now. What do? Well, you need to fix the materials. In a game engine, what this typically means is going to the internet, finding a material pack that you might like. You might go to a website like ambientcg.com. This is a great website. We use this a lot in the EECS 298 3D Tech Art and Animation course. And you can download one of these surfaces. So here you can see it's kind of like a plaster wall. When you download this, you're not going to get an image. You're going to get like 7 images, okay? Think about what I said with the table in front of you, the whiteboard, and the wall. Why would we get 7 images representing this plaster instead of just 1? It's interesting to think about. But what you can do is you can grab these materials and these textures that represent the material. You can just drag them into your content pane, okay? Once you have those textures, you can grab them out of the content pane and you can drag them onto any surface that you want. And after a few moments of Unreal Engine just kind of thinking about it, you have a beautiful new material on your surface. I'll tell you, this looks amazing, like without even doing anything. You're not even using the other textures and it looks fantastic. This is one of the strengths of Unreal versus any other game engine. By default, things just look nice in Unreal, okay? Typically. It is really, really amazing. The ETA on this is 1 minute. It really depends how quickly you can download, find a texture, a material that you like online, download it, open it up in a zip file, drag it in, and then drag the textures on, okay? In real life, if you want to deal with materials, you have to go to a place like Home Depot. You have to buy some very expensive paint. You have to hope you don't like mess up mixing it if you got to mix it. You have to get some brushes. You have to hope that the brushes haven't been destroyed because you forgot to dry them out after the last painting session, clean them out. And you have to paint very laboriously. Sometimes you need multiple coats and layers. Sometimes you need some primer that you have to put down first or the paint will look really weird. It's a disaster, okay? It is super annoying. It's very stressful in a way. So my takeaway here is that building environments is really tough in game engines. It's outrageously tough in the real world. There's so much to learn. When you look at an environment like Elden Ring, this massive, beautiful, artistically crafted world, full of different interesting materials and effects, particle effects, enemies with their own materials, glossy things, right? Matte things, organic leaves and brush and vegetation. All of this takes a long time to assemble. Elden Ring, I think, had like a 6 or 7 year plus development timeline and a massive army of people working on the game. Easily 100 plus. When you look at many of the credits sequences in your favorite video games, I was just looking at the credits sequence in World of Warcraft Classic. My goodness. You might have like an engineering team of 20, and then you'll look at the artist team, and it's like 60 or 80, okay? The artist core is often one of the largest kind of sub-teams of any game production. There's just so much that has to be created. Environments need to be so big and full of different things. It's incredible. And when you think about how difficult it must be in the real world to create new stuff, I think that, has anyone been to the Pandora Avatar Land in Disney World? It's Disney's, I think, latest big expansion to one of their parks. And it took them something like a decade to finish that. Absolutely amazing. The results speak for themselves. They are incredible. But building this kind of real-world level design, real-world materials, real-world environments takes an order of magnitude longer, probably several orders of magnitude longer than building them in game engines, okay? So I want to talk briefly about 3D assets, and this is a little bit of EECS 298 material. This is actually part of the lecture from that course. But when it comes to models, okay, we have characters that are full of objects and information and data that you might not realize, okay? When you have a character or even like a object in an environment, you have your geometry, which is what you're seeing here. You have vertices, 3D points. Connecting them forms edges. Lines between them and connecting edges forms faces, which is what we see in the gray here on this character. Geometry. However, if you want this character to actually look like a character, you have to give them texture and materials. You have to decide how light is going to bounce off of them. In this case, this is not a realistic character, so we do not want to shade the light like we do in real life, okay? We want to make it look like a cartoon, flat lighting, cartoon lighting. Sometimes a toon shader is what this is called. Okay, and this is called materials. A material is usually a package of some color and some albedo, some texturing, along with a shader to calculate how light affects the surface and stuff like that, some more logic, okay? Characters often go a bit beyond this, and they even have what's called an armature. When you go into Mixamo during P1 Alpha, and you grab your character and you put them into Mixamo and get them like walking around, right? The other day we had a Luigi here at office hours kind of walking around, and what's happening is your character has an armature or a skeleton. You might have heard it called a skeleton. And each of the vertices that make up this character is going to be associated with a bone on that skeleton. So when the bone moves, the vertex will move with that bone. This is done because as characters became larger and more complicated, as vertices, so this character has like a couple hundred vertices that make up her geometry, it is feasible for you to take Daisy's vertices here and move them one by one to create a different pose or an animation. But as characters got more advanced and the vertices went from hundreds of vertices in a character to thousands to millions, it became infeasible to start dragging those vertices by hand and moving them. So now we use skeletons and armatures and binding to move a bunch of vertices at once. All you have to do as a artist, as a developer, is to animate by taking those bones and moving them, okay? And just like our flesh, all of our cells in our flesh moving as the bone moves, all the vertices of the character move when the nearest bone moves. And you can create keyframes this way. You can create animation this way. It's very much like when you are a little kid and you've got your G.I. Joe dolls or your Barbie dolls, and you are just kind of getting them into different poses and configurations. It's pretty cool stuff, okay? You can make keyframes, which you see down here on a timeline, so you can get her into a pose, like a waving pose, and then you can click down here, move along the timeline, create new poses, create new keyframes, and I can copy those keyframes over, and now look at what we have, okay? With these 3 keyframes, really quickly, we have a basic waving animation. This is how you tend to create this different stuff, all right? From poses where a character's like, ha, and blinks, or someone who's fighting, or someone who's running. Running animations are very difficult, for me at least. But you can create a lot of this in a very short amount of time, which is very, very impressive stuff. So if you really go hard on this kind of stuff, if you get really into 3D art and modeling, you can create entire, like, award-winning films. Does anyone know what this film is? Film called Flow. I think it was made largely by one person, small team. It was made in Blender. I think it won an Oscar. I think it was the first Oscar that a Blender project had ever won. And so it is. There's a lot that goes into these 3D assets. In this course, you'll be downloading those assets largely from online, from Sketchfab, from fab.com, from other websites. Some of the students in this course who have taken EECS 298, I noticed that they're making their own models, which is super cool to see. When you download assets like 3D models, characters, objects from the internet, you can run into some problems. Has anyone tried to download something and you bring it into the game engine and it's just like, what is going on? Like, this thing is busted, right? This looks terrible. An entire assignment in EECS 298, like an entire week of work, was teaching students how to fix issues with imported models, because it's like a whole thing. It's like a whole job. To see these these 4 objects right here, the only thing I want to point out is that this one is cartoony. It has a different shading than the rest of them. Well, they look good in Blender, but when you bring them into Unity just willy-nilly, this is what they look like. Awful, okay? This box loses its material entirely. This box, which was cartoony and flatly shaded in Blender, right, looks like a nice, cool, artistic box, now has, normal, regular shading in Unity. Looks terrible, okay? Not what we want. This green object right here, which we accidentally left a camera object on and 2 lights on, now has, actually 3 lights, I think, now has 3 lights and an extra camera on it as well. And it's a bit of a disaster. This pink box looked fine in Blender, but we find here that it is like inside out. This is a case of inverted normals, which is a very common thing for modelers to mess up and not realize they've messed it up until you bring it to a game engine and you can see through the box, right? Materials need to be fixed up. Some materials, flat materials, need to be replaced or fixed. If you bring in special objects, some objects you download from the internet will come with extra lights or cameras, which will really blow up your game. I want to show you this real quick, actually. In the Unity editor, you don't care about Unity too much right now, but you will soon. Every time I bring in a new green box, it brings in like 3 new lights. So look at the screen. The screen is becoming like impossible to see through. The lighting is so bright. They all bring a camera as well, so that will also break the game completely. And then this is an inverted normals box, right? So it's extremely common that you go find something on the internet. Maybe it was made by like a student or something, and the model isn't ready for usage in Unreal Engine or Unity. And the question is, well, how are you going to fix this kind of thing? For you, because this isn't a 3D modeling course, your best bet is probably call me over, because I can almost certainly fix it for you. You can look into fixing it with Blender yourself. Blender's on all these machines, and GPT might be able to help you. Googling a YouTube video might be able to help. Or what I'd probably say is probably just try and grab a different model and see if a different model that you also like is going to be a bit easier to bring in. It's also worth noting that we don't care too much about your aesthetics for the most part in this course. Even if things are a little bit messed up, you're probably getting full points for it, so don't worry too much. On Project 1, one of your considerations is the topic of gray boxing, which I want to talk about briefly. Before you start going kind of into the details of a space, typically you kind of start scoped out and then you zoom in as you work. And in a space like this, this is what this kind of looks like. A laboratory like this might have a gray boxed version that looks kind of like this. And you can see the 2 trash cans in here are literally just thin vertical boxes. The 2 copy machines right here are slightly thicker boxes. And you can see all the desks and dividers and the general structure of the space. This is really, really good for getting a sense of scale. When you create something like this, you go into the VR preview mode, you walk around a bit, and you make sure that things are scaled right before you start building on top of something that might be too small or too big. This is extremely common in AAA game development, serious game dev. I want to show you this footage right here from one of Naughty Dog's projects, Uncharted 1. Let's take a look real quick. This level of gray boxing has just enough detail for the level designers, for the artists to understand the space and what it's supposed to be, and also how you're going to flow through it. A level designer might be able to look at this and see that, oh, there might be some problems, and make changes while it's super easy to make changes. Because as soon as the art team goes in and starts to polish all this up, it's very hard to make changes at that point. Very expensive. Okay, so you get it. This even happens with characters, as you can see here in dummies. I've even seen shows, like web shows, TV shows, animes, that one in particular I remember was introducing some villains at the very end of the season. But they hadn't finished the 3D models for the villains yet, so the villains are kind of obscured, and if you pay careful attention, you can see that they are just images. It's just some concept image. Okay? And then in the next season, they finally had time to make 3D models of those characters, and it worked out just fine. Okay, anyway, right, gray boxing gets old, we turn to materials. Materials are a requirement for your Project 1. It's one of the tasks for P1 Alpha. You could be working on materials now, but you are trying to go past that kind of gray boxing phase. And here's yet another reminder here on what materials really are under the hood. Materials are exceptionally powerful. These two blocks are the same color, it turns out. They're the same color. And here, right, a reminder going from the geometry to the material on the right, these boxes, they differ in more than just color, right? One's red and one's gray, but one looks notably older than the other. You notice that? The box on the left is kind of beat up, right? Even if they did have the same color, even if I tinted them to be the same color, the way light is reflecting on their surface is different, and thus they're always going to look fairly different. If you zoom in on this box right here, you can see these little divots, these little holes that have been kind of punched into this particular box. It looks like a bunch of wear and tear. My question for you is this. Are these little dots actually modeled in the geometry of the object? You would need a lot of vertices to actually punch all these little holes into the object. But if you look under the hood, look at this. Even though this object looks like it has a ton of holes and a bunch of kind of dents in it, actually, these boxes are the exact same under the hood. The exact same geometry. And only a small handful of vertices, only a small handful of triangles. So, what's happening here? How can we be getting these divots, these little divots, onto the object when they're both the same object and they're super simple objects too? Well, the answer is that it's faked. It's all in the material. Okay? It turns out if we can reflect the light in a special way, all right, to make it look like the light is kind of bending around this little hole, then it looks like there's a hole there even though there isn't a hole there. It's just a flat surface, but it looks like there's a hole. That's called a normal map. And if you look into that material that we downloaded, actually, I want to go download one now. Can I go do that real quick? AmbientCG.com. If we go to AmbientCG.com and go look at some cool surfaces, ooh, any that stick out? Got some wood, wooden floor, got some brick, got some beat up brick, got some like kind of rocky sand, got some beautiful sand, okay? You like the sand? Looks pretty good. If I download this sand and want to create this look on a block or on a surface, I'm going to go in here and I don't get a particular image. I go in and I actually get a folder. So let's open that up. I'm going to go to Extract All. Look at this. Oh my goodness. You don't just get one image, right? The color material might be what you most expected to see, but this texture alone will not get us everything we want. We also need what's called a normal map, or not a light map, a normal map. What on earth am I looking at? What is this crazy alien map? Any idea? We talked about this a little bit more in EECS 298, actually quite a bit more, so I won't go into a ton of depth here. But this image is not like any image you're used to. This image is not meant for human eyes. This image is a 2D array of vector 3s, i.e., a direction, a 2D array of 3D directions. Is that crazy or what? How could this be possible? Well, you know how a direction, a vector 3, is x, y, z, right? XYZ. What if we didn't have XYZ? We had RGB. Each pixel in an image has a red channel, R, a green channel, G, and a blue channel, B, RGB. So it turns out you can use an image, a 2D image, to store a 3-dimensional vector, a direction, for every single pixel. In other words, this texture right here is actually providing data on where light reflects off of this particular surface. This information is really important because it's what allows us to make the light kind of look right on these materials as you look at it from different angles and directions. The GPU takes all of these textures that we have here, ambient occlusion, color, displacement, normals, roughness, and combines them with a bunch of mathematics to get a really beautiful, realistic effect. And that's all it really takes. Nothing too crazy, just a bunch of different images. And so, extremely powerful stuff. When you go to create a material yourself, this material is going to look very strange. It looks like a blueprint. You have nodes, and you have these little sockets, these little slots, and you can connect the slots together. But it's a little bit different. This right here, this node on the right side, has a bunch of different slots where you can input whatever value you want. And so I think I can show you this right here, but I can grab a constant, RGB and XYZ, and I can plug this color into that color slot, and now I can control what the base color of the final material looks like. I can just send whatever color I want in there, and if I send in red, it's going to turn red, right? Got my color wheel, and so I have a lot of power there. Cool. But there are other slots as well, quite a few of them. Metallic, specular, roughness, emissive color, normal, ambient occlusion. And we can mess with all of these if you want to. So here's a little bit more of us doing that. So metallic, okay? What is metallic going to do for this? I can right-click, and then I can type constant, and I can get a float, okay? I can get a number. I plug 0 into metallic. Does this look metallic to you right now? No, not really. It's very matte. It's not very glossy. But if I go into this node and change this node's value to 1, see now it's 1, now does it look kind of metallic? It does. It's dealing with light in a bit of a different way. It looks pretty awesome. I can keep changing stuff though. So let's keep going. We have roughness in this footage. We have roughness. So if something is really rough, you're not going to be able to see much on it. It's not going to reflect light. Very focused manner, it's going to kind of scatter light. The result is going to kind of look more matte. But I've got roughness right here. I'm about to set roughness to 0. If you have a perfectly smooth surface, metallic surface, what do you have? Yeah.
A mirror.
A mirror. Watch this. Oh my goodness. And you can see North Carolina right here in the mirror. Okay? So we are changing the properties of this material by plugging numbers and sometimes textures and sometimes vector 3s, i.e. colors, into these slots. And we can mess with it as much as we want. We can go in between 0 and 1. So we can have a mirror that's kind of frosty, okay? And then it becomes more blurry over time until eventually we can't really see anything in it. Perfectly matte. Okay, let's keep going. I think next we might do emissive color. So, emissive color, we're going to go ahead and do a color again. So we grab the vector 3 node, and we have R, G, and B. Emissive color is going to give us kind of this, color that's being radiated around it. So you can see that the red kind of looks like it's glowing, right? This energy is just kind of coming off of the object. We can change the color of this node more. Now we have a yellow. We are mixing red and green. And so we have yellow. And now we're going to have a white. And so look at that. It doesn't even look like a normal object. It looks like a light bulb. Now I can punch this up to something much higher, 999,999,999, and look at this. It's going to be like looking at the sun, okay? It's like melting your eyeballs. It's just gleaming light everywhere. So there are a lot of things you can mess with on a material, a lot of these little knobs, and you're going to see something exactly like this on the Unity side when you go to Unity. But the thing to know is that we can play around with these to get a lot of different effects. What's more, you notice how we were plugging in numbers for the most part? Numbers and vector 3s, which is just a pair of 3 numbers, or a triple of 3 numbers. Well, it turns out you can plug in a lot more than just numbers, actually. I right-click and I choose the texture sample node. This will take an image file that I draw, and will apply it to any channel I hook this up to. So let's watch. I'm going to go into GIMP, which is a image editing program like Photoshop, and I am drawing on here. Okay, so a quick note. The red pixel is going to be a value of 255.00, right? RGB. 255.00. What about these black pixels? How do you represent the color black in a pixel? 000, right? So we can take this texture, and at different parts of the texture, different values are going to go in and affect how the effect is being applied. So I can load in this image now. I can actually, I think, just drag it in. Okay, drag it in. Let's find that texture. Where is it? It's got to be somewhere in there. Okay, come on. Can drag it right in. There we go. Now I can come over here and I can find that smile texture. Okay, okay. Now I see the smile texture right here. I can plug RGB in. Okay, and now look at emissive color. So in most of the object, I am emitting the red color. However, in these little portions, I am emitting the black color. Okay? So you can go in, you can draw faces, you can draw other things if you want to. One of the coolest things you can do is actually going to be something like this. So we could have plugged not into the emissive color, we could have plugged into roughness. What if I'm creating a really advanced object where the top is supposed to be a mirror, but the bottom is supposed to be just metallic? What if you're building a car and you want certain parts of the car to be really shiny, but then other parts like the steering wheel and the tires are not shiny at all? How do we do this? How do we make certain parts of an object have certain properties and other parts have other properties? Well, here's one way to do it, and it's crazy, okay? So we're going to, if we set the value here of roughness to 0, we get the mirror. If we set it to 1, we get the kind of metal wall. I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to grab this texture, and I'm going to draw the top, or I guess, the top as being this black color, okay? So what do these pixels mean if we plug this texture in to the roughness slot? Yes?
Not rough at all.
Yes. So if we plug this texture into the roughness slot, that means that all these pixels will be 0 roughness, because the black pixel is 0, 0, 0. Down here with the red, we have 255.00. So this means full roughness. So think in your head, when I plug this texture into the roughness slot, what is that ball going to look like? And we'll see if you're right. What is the ball going to look like based on this texture? Really quick, I changed it from red to white. White is 255, 255, 255. That's all you need to know. Okay, what's it going to look like? I bring that texture in. It is called top only. I'm going to select that texture in my texture sample node. I'm going to plug that RGB data into the roughness and look at that. Is that sweet or what? So we now have the ability to be very precise about where, not only kind of what effects we want to have within our material and what we want it to look like, but also where do we want that material to appear on different parts of our object. So, pretty cool. If you go into the top left corner while you're looking at your material and you click the Save button, it will save and then it will propagate that material out to whatever you have that's using it. So if this wall, because we dragged it in, remember, if this wall, this part of the wall is using the material, you'll see those changes kind of applied to it. You can create some very funky and interesting environments this way without even going into Blender or a dedicated 3D modeling program. It's easier to create details like this, much easier in something like Blender, but you can still do it in Unreal. And the most important part is that you kind of understand what's happening in case you need to fix something, okay? So, right, materials. Materials are very complicated. You can have different properties at different locations, different UVs on the object. For instance, this car has a very glossy material to its body, but the lights have a little bit less of a glossy material. The tires have a very matte material, kind of rubbery looking, different colors. Maybe the windshield is a little bit see-through, so a little bit translucent maybe, okay? Textures are very expressive, and what basically happens is you kind of wrap them around the geometry. So this is a good example, actually, of texture mapping. So would you agree to me, would you agree with me that right now, let me see, hold on. Right now, we have a 2D texture. Do you agree? I know this hand is like pulled this part up, but pretend that it's flat, okay? We have a two-dimensional texture with all the colors and the shapings that we want, the detail that we want. When I pull this up, when this person pulls this up, we're going to have this 3D shape all of a sudden, right? This is referred to as UV mapping or texture mapping. Basically, you need to have a 2D texture and some geometry, and you need to decide which faces of my geometry are going to have which part of the 2D texture. This is something we go over extensively in EECS 298, a couple assignments dedicated to it. It can be quite a pain, but it's definitely something you want to understand. When you think about a character like Mario, when you think about Mario's geometry, it's often very, very simple. If you take his texture and you apply, I'm going to take these parts of the texture and I'm going to apply them to these faces up here in the cap, okay? Making those decisions is you doing your texture mapping. And if you do it right, it looks quite nice. These images I got from USC, their explanation of this, I'm really surprised they kind of left it like this. Like, this is clearly broken. Like, this is broken bad. Like, real bad. This looks pretty bad, okay? Maybe I should just go in and fix it and, send it to them or something. But this is UV mapping. This is called texture mapping. When you get to the world of realism, and I'm looking at all the faces out there like, ugh, what is this? This looks horrible. Mario can look pretty normal here. It's no big deal. He's a cartoon character. When you have really realistic models, what you're basically doing, in order to have a 2D texture that you can wrap around kind of the skull, bean-shaped skull of typical humans, you have to kind of have a texture that looks like this. If you took this texture and you just kind of printed it out on paper and just kind of put it over my skull, it would fit relatively well. Unfortunately, the result is that we have this abominations that texture artists need to draw or produce or work with like every day. So look forward to that. You can also kind of see what's going on here. We have a debug texture, which is right here, just a 2D PNG, just like you've seen a million times. We can see that certain numbers, right, F, is getting mapped over to this part of this particular character's geometry. And then, the green up here, the 8, okay, this part, you can see it's being mapped to this part of the shirt. And you can kind of see the shirt outline over here, right? So, 3D artists have to spend a lot of time dealing with this. And actually, if you're a 3D artist, you stand to benefit immensely from also being a good 2D artist. Because otherwise, you are kind of stuck with this kind of geometry, and you have to hire someone to go make good textures, and then you have to kind of spend a lot of time working with them to get them to map properly to the locations you need. So, fairly interesting. Textures, images, the big takeaway here, I think, is that images are often for humans to look at, right? The pretty pictures we see online. But sometimes images are just containers for data. That's it. Data that was not meant to be looked at by humans. Data that's meant to be read by a computer, often written by a computer as well. And these images, these textures can encode a massive amount of data. Right, 3 to 4 floats per pixel, R, G, B, and A, red, green, blue, and alpha. And of course, they don't need to mean colors. They could mean anything, which is really, really cool. Sometimes a pixel's color, aka just data, doesn't really refer to color. It can be results of calculations and stuff like that. Okay, yeah. And again, like this texture right here doesn't look like much of anything, but we can use it to get this kind of interesting result and create a unique object in the environment. So something to keep in mind. You are kind of getting used to the Unreal version of the material editor, but in Unity, you're going to see the same thing, right? Some of the terms will be slightly different. Instead of a color, a base color notch, you'll have an albedo notch. There's the metallic. Instead of a roughness, which is what Unreal has, Unity has the opposite. The inverse, smoothness, okay? So sometimes you have to invert the texture to make it work properly, depending on what game engine you are in. One really, really cool anecdote here, and this is something we showed off in EECS 298 as well. It's multiple times, actually. This right here, can I zoom in on this? No, this is not going to let me zoom. Do you see these 2 coins? On the left, we have a coin from Super Mario Galaxy, kind of an old Nintendo Wii game. Okay, that's got to be like from the early 2010s. This coin is a more recent coin from the late 2010s, Super Mario Odyssey. This coin, which of these coins do you think looks better? The one on the left over here? I wouldn't blame you. I like the low poly art style. I always have. How many of you think this coin looks more luxurious and rich? It's more modern. Look at how smooth it is, right? It's using way more vertices. It has more geometry. Oh my gosh, it's got to be way harder to render. Actually, no. Under the hood, in the wireframe view, look at this. This coin on the left, everything, even the notch in the center, is modeled in geometry. That means we need a lot more vertices. We need a lot more triangles to represent that object. On the right, I kid you not, this coin right here with all of its detail and roundedness is literally like a pizza pie, okay? Look at this thing. That is way simpler. It says in the text, this one on the right uses 96 triangles. This one on the left uses 268 triangles. As we have moved into the future, Nintendo has become even better at saving computational time and resources. Okay? They're much more powerful now. They're more efficient. And they are using these map files to achieve this. They're not actually modeling this notch that you see in the coin, they are using this normal map to basically fake the reflection of light in order to make you think that there is a notch here in the center of the coin. All right? So, pretty cool stuff. We're going to get through this. I think we are now through it. So I think we can take our break now. But the takeaway is this. Materials are a really, really, really big deal in many domains. 3D art and 3D assets in general is not a light subject. It's extremely technical. A lot of things can go wrong. And if you don't know about that, you should ask any of our 80 students who took EECS 298 last semester. EECS 298 is a flex tech course for STAMP students. It's an elective. I think for LSA students, it's like a creative expression course. It's a lot of things. It is a 3D tech art course, an animation course. It teaches you how to use Blender. It teaches you how to create 3D models. These are our 20-minute models. Students have to create a daily model in 20 minutes. And that sounds like a lot, but students actually get to skip multiple models per week. So it's not nearly as bad as it sounds. But you've got students who are like, they're getting really good. Okay? Isabel was able to create like a really nice apple in just a handful of minutes. Looks fantastic. You can even watch her process video if you want to and watch her make that model. Traffic cones, we got a nice helmet here. That looks really nice. We got sushi down here. Okay, the knight's helmet looks pretty cool. Okay, we got sushi. I want to check that out. Nicholas Way made this nigiri. Take a click on that. There we go. Get a bit of a close-up look. So it's a course that teaches you, of course, how to model 3D objects, characters, animate them, create materials, do a lot of really interesting stuff under the hood of 3D assets. But one of the most important things in this course is just understanding what goes into a 3D model. What is inside of that weird-looking FBX file that you downloaded? And that, why isn't it importing correctly? What's wrong with it? How do you go into the guts of a 3D model, fix it up so that it actually looks right? How do you bring it into a game engine and get the character animating properly? Stuff like that is extremely technical, very difficult. You have to understand the world of art, and you have to understand the world of technology. So, if this kind of thing interests you, if you want to get much better at making your games look good and be lively and full of cool characters, if you want to learn 3D printing, if you want to learn a lot of other stuff, photogrammetry, then take a look, consider the course. It's going to be available next semester. It is moderate workload. So not super heavy, but not negligible either, okay? You won't learn a difficult program like Blender. You won't gain these superpowers by taking a super easy course. So, anyway, all right, I'm going to stop talking. Go ahead, use the restroom. I'll turn some music on, and we'll be back. I think I want to get started talking about a really important topic, components. What are these components doing? Why do we use them? Why are they so powerful? We're going to talk about one of the most important design patterns in all of game development. We're going to talk about the composition design pattern, okay? When we come back in 5 minutes, see you then. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have 20 minutes remaining. I want to show you something that should not be possible. Okay? I want to show you something that is a technological marvel. Something that a small team managed to create. Somehow. Have you ever heard of a game called Scribblenauts? Okay? Quite a few of you. This is a popular series, and for very good reason. Let me show you why. Okay, here I am in the kind of countryside. I need a noun, not a proper noun. I need a noun. You can give me an adjective if you want. What's the first thing that comes to your mind? A noun. Tell me, I need a word. Just say it.
Sheep.
Sheep? Okay. I got myself a sheep for the farm. Good. Now, you might say, well, I want a big sheep. Well, we can have that too. What about a big flying sheep? I need another noun. What's a good one? What's something good pairing for a sheep? How about a wolf? How about that? A wolf. Uh-oh. Oh, no. They didn't stand a chance. I need something to deal with the wolf. Quick, quick. Oh, the wolf's attacking my sister.
Gun.
A gun? What kind of gun?
Rifle.
A rifle? Sorry, dude. You attacked my sister. Okay, I need something new. I need a noun. Come on, something. Let's see if you can trick it. Let's see if you can beat it. If you can beat Scribblenauts, yes.
Spaceship.
Spaceship? Too easy. Way too easy. Okay, let's get a challenge, please.
Kraken.
Kraken? Okay, we need something to defeat the Kraken. How about Cthulhu? I spelled that right. Oh, I put him in the spaceship. Cthulhu's taken off. All right, I'm going to need a large, flaming, killer robot to defeat these things. Oh no, he's riding the Kraken. It's not what I intended. Hold on. There you go. And now they're going to fight. And now, in order to clean all this up, I made a big mess of it. I'm going to need a nuke. And I'm going to shoot the nuke. Well, there you go. I cleaned it up as much as I could anyway. All right. I think in previous versions, they must have patched it because the nuke used to kill you when I first started showing this off. What on earth is this thing? It's like a magical infinite game that has every single object in the dictionary with adjectives, right? Not only can you specify a robot, but you can specify a big one and it doubles in size. A killer robot and it wants to attack everything. A flaming robot and it starts on fire. Any adjective you can think of, any noun you can think of. Absolutely astounding, isn't it? Absolutely amazing. This kind of game shouldn't be possible. And would you believe me if I told you it was made by a team of only, I think, about 30 people? Absolutely incredible. Okay? So this is Scribblenauts, a famous game series. It was launched in 2009. It was created by a small team, a startup team called Fifth Cell, and published by Warner Brothers. Obviously, they're not small, but the team that made it is actually pretty small. This is a game where you can create any object by typing its name. And I mean any object. Okay? If you type professor, you get a professor. If you type jackalope, it knows what that is, and it gives it to you. Absolutely amazing. And so, as engineers, you should see something like this, and you should immediately wonder, how on earth did a team manage to create something so big with so few resources? And the answer, it turns out, will be massive reuse of code and assets. Reduce, reuse, recycle. That's the only way to make this kind of thing possible. And in particular, this team made incredible use of composition, components. You see them here in Unity, a game object, what we call an actor in Unity, with what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different components. Here we see an actor in Unreal Engine with 2 components, static mesh component and aft toggle actors. Here you can see kind of a different style and flavor between Unity and Unreal. Unity loves tiny, small components and a lot of them, and Unreal likes bigger, chunkier components and fewer of them, but they both use components, okay? In your Game Engine Architecture upper level CS course, the EECS 404 course, formerly EECS 498, you build your own game engine to support components, and then that's how game designers build their games in your engine, except your components are Lua scripts. And you define them, you list them, not in a visual editor, but in a JSON file, okay? But composition, components, is something you've been getting some practice with. But what exactly are components, okay? When we think about reusing code, as engineers, as programmers at Michigan, we usually think to something else first. We usually think to the classic technique of inheritance. And inheritance really is a very famous technique. It's widespread, extremely popular. Pretty much every programming language under the sun supports inheritance in some form. Java, C++, C#, Python, okay? The usage pattern for inheritance is something like this. It is an is-a relationship hierarchy, an is-a tree, as in, you have a professor that is a human. The human is a object, but the student is a human as well as the professor is. It's just kind of a specialized form of a human that has a few more variables and a few different versions of some functions. A jackalope is a rabbit, and a rabbit is an object, just like a human is an object. Okay? It's this is-a relationship tree. And it can be very useful. This is how you tend to format and set this up in the syntax of C++. You have your base human class, your parent human class, that has a bunch of data, some variables, okay, and some functions, eat, sleep, talk. A professor class might derive from the human parent class, and the professor is kind of a special type of human, so the professor class might introduce a teach function. The professor class still has all these things. It inherits these things from the human, but it introduces some new features as well. The student is a specialized human, just like the professor is, but instead of introducing new variables, it changes. It overrides the way that eat and sleep functions that it gets from the human work. And in particular, the student never eats and the student never sleeps. And that's what makes them a special type of human. And so you can see that inheritance is everywhere. It's in Unity. It is even in our components, because in order to create a component, we have to make it of the mono-behavior component class. In the blueprints in Unreal Engine, you can look at our components, our affordances, for instance, and you can see that they have a parent class as well, up in the top right corner. Our components even use inheritance. So inheritance is kind of your go-to, all right? It's how you want to reuse code when you're just learning. But inheritance has some problems. Here's a scenario that's really going to become difficult for us. So congratulations to all of you. You officially work for a game dev / XR studio. Congrats, you're rolling in the dough soon. And your boss walks in on the first day and gives you your first major task. You need to create a panda, okay? A panda. Now, you are a Michigan engineering student, so you are way ahead of the game. You are going to want to reuse as much from this panda as possible because you know that your boss requested a panda today, but they might request a lemur tomorrow or a rabbit tomorrow. So you set up an inheritance reuse hierarchy. You create a panda class, and that panda class is going to inherit from a bear class. The bear is a mammal. The mammal is a living entity. In the living entity class, we store like the HP and the bathroom and the hunger and sleep statistics and stuff like that, kind of like The Sims. And the living entity class is an object. This is the start of your inheritance ISA hierarchy, your ISA tree, your inheritance tree. And it's a pretty, thoughtful way to go about it. Okay? So the next day, your boss walks in and they request an ice panda. It's the holiday season. They just watched Frozen with their kids. They want an ice panda. So the question for you is, where should we put the new ice panda class in this inheritance hierarchy? Any ideas? What makes sense? Yeah, exactly. This is really nice, right? We have this structure already set up. We have all of our panda-related logic in the panda class, and ice panda is just kind of a specialization of the ice of the panda class. And so we just slip it right under there, ice panda. We put the new ice functionality into that ice panda class. The next day, your boss has been on a horror binge, okay? And so he walks in and requests the Lovecraftian panda. What do we do now? Where do we put the horror panda class? Scary panda class. Where should it go? Should it go under ice panda? We don't want to put it under ice panda because we don't want to put ice-related variables, data, and logic into our Lovecraftian panda. It doesn't need that stuff. It would be very weird to do it. Okay? We can put the Lovecraftian panda right under the panda class. It is another different specialization of the panda. Makes perfect sense. All of this has been really easy so far, and you're feeling really good. But then your boss walks in the next day, and they make a request that will change your life forever. Okay? A request you won't be able to provide. Not cleanly. Your boss gives you an impossible task. Your boss requests the ice snake. And you're doomed. You don't even know it. At first you think, oh, this is easy. But you realize hope is all gone. And the question for all of you is why? This should be easy. It feels like it should be easy. But in fact, it is not. What could we do? What could we try and do with this ice snake class? We want to reuse as much as possible, and we don't want to violate the dry principle, i.e., we don't want to duplicate any logic or data in multiple places in our inheritance tree. What could we do? What's one idea, even if it's not perfect? What do you got? Yes?
Just make a subclass of snake.
Okay, let's create a snake subclass. And that's probably going to be under reptile, which will be under living entity. Okay? first idea that's really bad. I'm not sure why I make it first. No one ever suggests it. It's so bad. We could put it under Ice Panda. You might do this if you want to reuse the ice logic. But this is a big problem, right? Because now you've got a bunch of Panda data and logic in your snake. That makes no sense. That's going to be horrible. Probably won't work. Okay? Ugly, ugly. We could, and this is probably what I would do, we could create a reptile category, and we could have a snake class, and we could have an ice snake class underneath that. But there's a problem with this. What is the problem? This violates our dry principle, because now we have ice-related code and data in two different classes. We have a copy and paste bug, okay? Big no-no, all right? If I haven't explained dry yet, dry comes up in almost all of my courses at some point. Dry stands for don't repeat yourself. It's actually originally a military idea. It's an idea that applies very effectively to big bureaucracies, big institutions, and also, as it turns out, big code bases. The problem was this. You could send soldiers an order, right? You could send out a bunch of copies of an order on a piece of paper. But then you realize the order is flawed. We need to change the order. We got to change it fast. So we're going to send out another piece of paper with a different order. Now, some people only got one order. Some people got both. Some got none. And the question is, well, which order should we believe? And, you know, it's not obvious. You now have multiple orders floating around. You have multiple copies, okay, of similar orders floating around. Which one is the authoritative source? What is the source of truth? You made copies, so you no longer know. In other words, every piece of knowledge must have a single unambiguous authoritative representation within a system. This is to say, you don't want to be copying and pasting stuff around. Have you ever had a bug where you had some logic in your program that you liked? You thought, maybe I should put this into a function, but you don't. Instead, you copy and paste that logic into 5 different locations in your code base. Has anyone ever done that? What goes wrong when you do this? And it always goes wrong, all right? Always, yes.
Eventually you want to change it, and
yeah,
you change it in one place, another place.
Yep.
And so it kind of just all falls apart.
Yes. You copy and pasted this little chunk of logic into 5 different places. One day you realize it has a bug, or maybe you want to upgrade it. Well, unfortunately, you now need to upgrade it or fix the bug in 5 different places. And if you forget and only do 4, guaranteed instant bug. And it's going to take you hours to track it down, and then you're going to slap your head and go, I'm such an idiot. I forgot to update it in this one place, right? You want to avoid that. You want to have a single source of truth. If you're using a function, instead of copying and pasting 5 different places, you can go to that one function. Single source of truth, you fix it in that one place, you have fixed it everywhere. Okay? So that's dry. In other words, you want to avoid placing redundant functionality and data into multiple locations of your inheritance hierarchy. That's kind of how it applies to this inheritance tree. The big problem here is that we now have ice logic in the snake part of the tree, and we now have it in the panda part of the tree. So it's kind of nasty, all right? You could create an ice object, but now you just have the same problem. You have ice stuff in multiple locations in our tree. It's a big problem. Another question, what if during gameplay we want to melt the ice panda? Can you change your inheritance hierarchy? Can you change what your parent class is during runtime? No, that's like a compile time problem. So you usually can't do that kind of thing. What do you have to do? A really hacky solution would be to despawn the ice panda, spawn in a new panda, and try and copy over as much data as you can. That's a really kind of a nasty solution, okay? It might not work for all of your classes. It might need some really hacky code. That's not going to work when we need to have every, noun in the dictionary in our game, okay? We have to nail this if we're going to make Scribblenauts be possible. We are running in circles trying to solve this problem. And it's a fundamental issue with what we're trying to do and with the structure we're trying to use. You have run into this problem before. If you've ever tried to sort photos into different albums or sort things into different folders in your file system. Imagine for a second that you have a bunch of photos from a vacation of cars and boats. And everything is going well. You're dragging the cars to the car folder. You're dragging the boats to the boat folder until you run into this photo. Uh-oh. You're screwed. What do? You can't organize this boat, this car, using this ISA structure, okay? It simply doesn't work. It's not compatible with what you're trying to do, okay? And that's why we're running into problems with the ice snake, okay? You could do multiple inheritance, okay? You could say, I want to inherit from an ice object and a snake object, right? Seems kind of natural. I'm just going to kind of pull in the traits that I want by inheriting from the classes that I need. This is called multiple inheritance, and it is banned by a bunch of the world's most popular languages. Whenever you see something like this, you should kind of stop. It's a big warning sign. Like, wow, why did Java think this is such an evil thing to do that it's banned in the language? You just can't do it. And here's why. You can have a parent class with a certain function like sleep, and you can have child classes that derive that function and override it. They change it. Students don't sleep at all, so they override and change the sleep function. Instructors sleep a lot more, so they override and change the sleep function. Now, one day, you have multiple inheritance. You have a person who is both a student and an instructor at the same time. You have me, circa 2017, when I was a grad student running 494 by myself. Okay? So, a question for you. Which version of the sleep function should I use? Am I a student or am I an instructor? And the answer is, I don't know. And most languages do not provide you a facility to choose which version of sleep this class down here should inherit and use. And so it explodes, and your compiler goes crazy on you. Okay? Very nasty stuff. This is called the deadly diamond, and it's a fairly famous problem with multiple inheritance, and why you don't hear about multiple inheritance much these days, do you? You don't. So we need a new approach. We need a new way to specify that the ice snake should have certain properties from a snake and certain properties from ice objects and certain properties from a living entity, okay? And that solution is going to be composition. I'm not going to talk to you about it today because we're going to finish the lecture next time. But let me tell you this. I'm going to tell you everything you need to know right here in this famous phrase. Have you heard this famous phrase before? If it sounds like a duck, if it looks like a duck, if it walks like a duck, it's a duck. Have you ever heard that phrase? It's not about what you are. It's not about who you are. It's about what you've got, what you can do that makes you something. Okay? Composition is about the components you have, not about what your parent is. All right? It's about the things you can do. It's about the data you've got. And that data comes in the form of components. You can put them onto objects. You can remove them willy-nilly. You aren't inheriting things. You are collecting components. And the components you've got determines what you can do and who you are. Okay? All right, everyone. That is all I have for you. I have office hours from 6 to 8 tonight. 2 hours. 2 hours to help get you through this tricky P1 Alpha assignment. fight the good fight, do the best you can, and remember, you don't have to finish the tasks outright. So long as you have a nice rough draft of the tasks, you're probably going to get all the points for that task. So use that fact to your advantage. And when you get to Wednesday, we're going to give you a whole nother week to finish this stuff up. Okay? Rock and roll. We will see you on Wednesday. And I will see you tonight if you come to office hours. See you then, everyone. Okay, everyone online, good to see you. And we will see you later. Take care. Bye-bye.